Minister, of course, it's been a back and forth for some time now, and tensions are running high this week following the Prime Minister's address at the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce's business meeting. And yesterday, the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the Freeport Licensees Association both would have released statements on the Prime Minister's address. You would have also released a response to those statements, just noting that they were too similar. Tell us about that. Tell us about your view on their response this morning.
Well, first of all, the responses were unnecessary, completely unnecessary. The Bahamas Chamber of Commerce invited the Prime Minister to come to speak to their meeting, which included the business community. And I gather the Grand Bahama Port Authority shareholder was present as well, to simply outline what the government's position was and is. And that's what the Prime Minister did. It wasn't meant to engage in a tit-for-tat dialogue about you said this and I said that and all the rest of it. I thought these people were interested in what are the government's plans for the city? Why are we where we are? And that's been established. There's no argument about that. There's no talk about, I gather one of the things said there were inaccuracies. There are no inaccuracies in it. The history is what it is. The position is what it is. And the Grand Bahama Port Authority has one simple thing to do, is to respond to the legal position. And that's not a matter for argument in the public. But all of this is designed now to whip up political support, it appears to me, to derail what is the policy of the government on this matter. And that's unfortunate because, you know, from all countries, the most powerful organ in the country is the government. That has to be necessarily so. And the government looks out for the best interest of the people of the country. Neither the Grand Bahama Port Authority nor this organization, which calls itself the Licensees Association, and nobody knows what standing they have, who these members are, what they are. I mean, it just seems like a group of people got together to do this. But none of them have the responsibilities that the government has. And they need to understand that. And the best thing for them to do is to draw back from this public posturing that they're going on with. And the government will meet with anyone who has standing to resolve whatever issues are outstanding.
Minister, in your statement, you alluded to some things. Why do you think that there was so much similarities in the statements that were both issued on the same day?
Well, there's a game which, in my view, is being run. Things that the Port Authority can't say itself, it has to have some front group saying them. So it's a good cop, bad cop situation. And the language is so similar between the two releases, you wonder if that's a reasonable conclusion to come to, whether or not the operating minds are the same. I got a note from a businessman this morning who said, look, I have several licenses. I'm a big businessman in Grand Bahama. I don't know who this Freeport Licensees Association is, and I'm not a member. I've not been asked to join, so they can't speak for me. So pretending to speak for licensees is something which they do not, in my view, have a mandate or authority to do. And certainly they don't have the responsibility.
What is the government?
They should in fact be, they should in fact be patriots of our country and be saying it's about time that some order is brought to this situation which helps Bahamians in this city. That should be the position of licensees, not carrying the water for the people who are the source of the problem.
And now with their response, what is the government's response to their statement in terms of joining in this back and forth saga?
Well, the Office of the Prime Minister, I see, issued a statement saying they don't respond to unsigned statements with nameless people, and that's fair enough. I'm responding purely as the chairman of the party because they're trying to make this a political struggle. And if that's what the argument they want to join, let's go to the races. Let's see what happens if they think they can join that battle. But as I said, and will say in another context I release in the morning, In 1969, when Sir Lyndon Pindling issued his statement, which he said there's this unbending social order in Freeport, and if it doesn't bend, it'll be broken. That was followed up by concrete action. There was a negotiation with the then Grand Bahama Port Authority, which agreed that the powers of policing and powers of immigration would be brought back to the government, and that even when licenses were issued, before those licenses were issued by the port would check with the government first to see whether the government had any objections to the granting of the licenses. That was followed by a constitutional conference in London in 1969. At that conference, a couple of things were done. One was the word premier was changed to prime minister. And then there was a provision put in the 69 Constitution which made it clear that notwithstanding the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement, the Bahamas government had the responsibility for immigration and for security issues. That settled that. So what that tells you is this was done with the consent of the British at the time. They were our sovereign overlords. They no longer are. We are sovereign ourselves. So what you have now is a contractual dispute. And the remedy in a contractual dispute is simply in damages. So all this stuff about who has the power to do what and who doesn't, the government has the power to rectify this. We're not there yet. We're following the provisions of the agreement on arbitration. And that's all we're saying. The Obi man has said it for us best. I think I said it before. Pay me what you owe me. I've come to collect what you owe me. That's all this is about.
And you spoke about rejecting each and every material, allegation, statement, charge, supposition, theory, assertion, etc. Elaborate on that statement for me.
Well, the first line, the propaganda line, was that the prime minister's statement contained inaccuracies. Well, there are no inaccuracies, and it just falls from there. All of those words that were used in my statement are synonyms for the assertions that they made with regard to inaccuracies by the prime minister. Prime minister didn't go there for a debate with them. The prime minister went there to tell them what the policy of the government is. Now, they have to adjust themselves to that policy. And as I said, their remedy is ultimately in damages. But the city cannot continue on its present path without some intervention from the government. We've been subsidizing the city. People say, what is the subsidy? Well, as I indicated, in 2016, we passed an act. The act forgave the amount of real property tax that would have been due on the land which is owned by the Port Authority group of companies. One estimate is that is $8 million a year of revenue foregone. It has been now 8 years. 8 times 8 is $64 million. That's money that could have gone to taxpayers, to the Treasury to pay for education and other things that the Bahamas government has to pay for. And that's just one example. And the prime minister pointed out the Lucayan waterway, the bridges, the dereliction of duty on all of those things by the folk who have the primary responsibility to do this. And of course, the big thing is the airport. You just walk away from the airport. One of the businessmen said it best. What confidence does it give? You're talking about the Bahamas government causing problems with investor confidence, but what confidence does an investor have who sees the principal owners of the city collect the insurance money and then offload the airport on the government and say, you build it back? $250 million of taxpayers' money now has to be spent to carry out an obligation of the Grand Bahama Port Authority. So I'm sure at their town meeting or plan meeting, they'll be spinning a lot of yarns about how that was not their responsibility and blah, 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 blah. But that's where we are today.
And speaking of the meeting, in the letter by the Freeport Licensees Association, the statement, they said that we wholeheartedly agree with Prime Minister Davis. Let's indeed break the chains that are holding back the development of Grand Bahama, beginning with expediting government approvals on critical projects that have been approved by the GBPA and will benefit us all. This is best done through collaboration, not arbitration. What is your response to that conclusion of the statement?
Well, there you go. I mean, that's a prime example. This mealy mouth talking out of both sides of your mouth. That's a pure Grand Bahama Port Authority lie. Their line is the government is holding up the progress of the city, when in fact the evidence is the only people that are driving the city forward is the government. I mean, they're claiming credit, for example, for the Carnival Cruise Port. No, they don't have anything to do with the Carnival Cruise Port. And the Carnival Cruise Port could have gotten off the ground long ago if it were for the government. But these folk, the report is that they made $16 million off that transaction selling that property to the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Ask them, what did they do with the money? Did they invest it in the city of Freeport? The last I checked, they made a statement saying they're going to spend $600,000 patching the roads in Freeport. So the Minister of Works, as he then was, Alfred Sayers, told me to build a road in the Bahamas costs $1 million a mile if you're going to use hot mix. So what kind of road are they going to build for $600,000 in Grand Bahama at those prices? And then when I was there last week, I saw where they signed another contract, say $1.4 million to patch some more roads. But the walls at the Grand Bahama Waterway are breached. We went under the bridge. The bridge is not complete. It's been 5 years almost since Dorian, and that's not done. They can't seem to get it done. So the evidence is there that, it's just a gentle reminder that time's up. The model's changed. We got to move on. And if you can't do it or you're unwilling to do it, let somebody else do it. No hard feelings. As Michael Manley used to say, cool breeze. We agree and move on.
And now many residents are concerned with moving forward with the future because of this public exchange. How do you think this exchange will impact the future collaboration and development efforts in Freeport?
As long as the Progressive Liberal Party is at the helm of this country, the future for Grand Bahama is bright, despite the fact that many Grand Bahamians do not support the Progressive Liberal Party. We have an obligation as a political party to ensure that that city and that island succeeds, regardless of who represents them politically. So as long as we're there, bright future. The city's future fortunes are turning around because of what the government has been doing and saying and investing in the city. The drag is that the people who have the regulatory responsibility for the city are not stepping up to the plate to carry out their responsibilities. And tell them, step away from town meetings and all the rest of it. Just do what you are supposed to do. The only one who thinks that they're laser focused on getting investment in Grand Bahama is them, and they're living in a dream world. That much is clear.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? Any final words, Minister?
Again, I thank all of the business people who showed up at that meeting, listened carefully to the Prime Minister, understood what he was saying, have assured us that they understand what he's saying, and look forward to the forward progress of the city. I thank them for their support, and I look forward to working with all of them to trying to build a better Grand Bahama, a better Freeport, and a better Bahamas. We're all dedicated to that task, and I thank them very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Minister, for your time today. And that'll conclude our interview.
Thank you.